and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Meher Sher and these are the headlines. A special plane of the Pakistan Air Force is in Beijing to bring back the first batch of 500,000 doses of a vaccine promised by China earlier this month. Authorities have already put in place necessary measures for vaccine storage and transportation to various federating units. Pakistan has so far recorded nearly 545,000 infections and 11,657 deaths. Globally, there are over 102 million infections and more than 2.2 million deaths. The world powers have condemned the surge in violence in Afghanistan and held the Taliban responsible for the majority of incidents. In a joint statement, the EU, US, and NATO missions called on the Taliban to support the Afghan people by ending violence. Meanwhile, Taliban's political deputy Mullah Baradar Akund and Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif discussed the Afghan peace process. Police have detained more than 1,000 people as rallies in support of jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny begin across Russia. Police say the protests have not been authorized and will be broken up. The Kremlin critic was arrested on the 17th of January after returning home from Germany for the first time since he was poisoned last year. A farmer's caravan of at least 700 vehicles is reaching New Delhi border today to reinforce their agitation against the farm laws. A union leader says around 10,000 farmers from Punjab will be coming with sufficient ration. This comes as the government blocked mobile internet services in several areas around New Delhi amid farmers' protests. And in football, Bayern Munich have outclassed Hoffenheim 4-1 in their... Well, those were the headlines. More news in detail after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now for the news in more detail. A special plane of the Pakistan Air Force is in Beijing to bring back the first batch of 500,000 doses of a vaccine promised by China earlier this month. The country will receive a total of 1.2 million doses of the Chinese vaccine by the end of next month.
Pakistan is set to begin the first phase of the coronavirus vaccination strategy next month. Authorities have already decided upon a comprehensive plan for the administration of vaccines, starting from frontline health workers. Necessary measures have been put in place for vaccine storage and transportation to various federating units. A day earlier, the chairman of the National Command and Control Center, the organization spearheading efforts to tackle the outbreak, said Pakistan will receive 17 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine in the first half of 2021. The delivery will start from next month with around 6 million doses to be received by March. Pakistan has so far approved 3 coronavirus vaccines: the Oxford's AstraZeneca vaccine, Chinese state-owned Sinopharm, and Russian-developed Sputnik V. The country has so far recorded nearly 545,000 infections and 11,657 deaths.
Whereas Germany has threatened legal action against laboratories failing to deliver coronavirus vaccines to the European Union on schedule. Tension over delays in vaccine distribution is mounting as most of the European countries fall short of supplies. German Economy Minister Peter Altmaier says no company can favor another country over the EU. Meanwhile, Mexico has reported nearly 1,500 deaths overnight, taking the country's toll to over 158,000. With an average of over 3,000 deaths every day. The U.S. healthcare system is beyond overwhelmed trying to handle patients and administer vaccines. Washington has also backed off on a plan to offer vaccinations to the 40 prisoners held at the infamous Guantanamo Bay. in Cuba. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.2 million lives and infected over 102.5 million people. Now, the world powers have condemned the surge in violence in Afghanistan and held the Taliban responsible for the majority of the incidents. In a joint statement, the US, the EU, and NATO missions called on the Taliban to support the Afghan people by ending violence. They also called on the Afghan government to investigate the attacks and bring the responsible to justice. The Kabul administration welcomed the joint statement. Meanwhile, the Afghan government says its forces have killed 36 Taliban fighters in southern Kandahar province. The defense ministry says 5 other fighters were wounded during the operation in the Arghandab district of the province. The Taliban have claimed that the government forces attacked a Red Cross convoy in the district, which left a civilian dead. The Taliban and Iran's leadership have discussed the latest developments in the Afghan peace process. Taliban's political deputy, Mullah Baradar Akund, called on Foreign Minister Javad Zarif in Tehran. Taliban spokesman Dr. Mohammad Naeem said the meeting was held in a good atmosphere. He said the two sides discussed the Afghan talks and full implementation of the Doha Agreement. The Taliban spokesperson added they also discussed the bilateral issues. He said both sides underscored the importance of peace in Afghanistan and the region. Moving on, a farmer's caravan of at least 700 vehicles is reaching New Delhi border today to reinforce their agitation against the farm laws. This comes as the government blocked mobile internet services in several areas around New Delhi amid the farmers' protest. A union leader says around 10,000 farmers from Punjab will be coming with sufficient ration. Meanwhile, the farmer unions say they are open to resuming talks with the government on the contentious farm laws, but they accuse the government of offering dialogue on one hand while harassing them on the other. The farmers have also rejected the government's proposal to halt implementation of the laws for 18 months since November. Thousands of farmers have been camping at Delhi borders against the laws they say benefit private buyers. And police have detained more than 1,000 people as rallies in support of jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny begin across Russia. Police say the protests have not been authorized and will be broken up. Navalny's supporters took to the streets in Serbia and Russia's Far East despite biting cold and threats of arrest. Moscow and other major Russian cities are also set to stage protests later today. In the capital, the police announced the closure of 7 metro stations and said the movement of pedestrians will be limited to the city center. Despite pressure from authorities, Navalny aides called for nationwide demonstrations ahead of his trial starting on Tuesday. The Kremlin critic was arrested on the 17th of January after returning from Germany for the first time since he was poisoned last year. Moving on, Israeli soldiers have fatally shot a Palestinian man in the illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank. In a statement, the Israeli military accused the victim of attempting to stab the soldiers before they shot him. But no soldier or civilian was reportedly killed or wounded by the alleged attacker. The Palestinian Health Ministry has also confirmed the man's death. Also in Israel, thousands took to the streets of Jerusalem in protest against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Demonstrations over Netanyahu's indictment on graft charges and handling of the COVID-19 outbreak have entered their 32nd week. Protests calling for Netanyahu's resignation continue to intensify. The police used water cannons for the first time in months to disperse demonstrators. One person has been hospitalized after being hit in the face by water jet, while police said they arrested 2 others. Netanyahu is set to appear in court for the second time on February 8th to respond to the criminal indictment against him. Now, the United Nations has announced candidates for the leadership of Libya's transitional government. The UN's Libya support mission says 24 candidates have been named for the Presidential Council and 21 for the Prime Minister's office. The 75 participants of Geneva peace talks will vote next week to pick the three-person Presidential Council and a Prime Minister. The interim unity government will govern until elections are held on the 24th of December. However, the members of the interim setup will not be eligible to participate in the elections. While UN-backed talks have progressed, many Libyans fear competition for posts could trigger fresh fighting. And Vietnam's ruling Communist Party chief Nguyen Phu Trong has been re-elected for a third term. Vietnam has no paramount ruler and is officially led by four pillars, in which the chief of its Communist Party is the most powerful post. The state media said the 76-year-old conservative was given the nod after a week of closed-door talks. Trong was granted an exception to party rules which say people over the age of 65 should retire. Getting elected for a third term is rare in Vietnam's history and makes Trong one of the most powerful leaders in recent times. Trong's last 5 years were defined by his strong anti-corruption drive. In Fiji, at least one person has died and 5 others are missing as tropical cyclone Anna slammed the South Pacific island. The Category 2 storm sustained winds of up to 140 kilometers per hour. The National Disaster Management Office said a 49-year-old man drowned while 4 fishermen and a 3-year-old child are missing. It said over 7,600 people are taking shelter in evacuation centers after being rescued from flooded villages. Officials added people continue to ignore warnings against venturing out during the storm. The cyclone has triggered heavy rains, causing widespread flooding across the island. And we'll be back with more stories after a short break. Stay with us. We're back. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has badly affected outdoor activities and lifestyles in general. Keeping that in mind, the administration of Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, has established a drive-in cinema at F9 Park. This will benefit the residents, giving them an entertainment activity from the comfort and safety of their cars. This report by our correspondent, Manahil Ahmed.
Pakistan is no different from the world when it comes to the love of movies and cinema. But due to the pandemic, pop culture migrated to streaming sites and people were left with next to no recreational activities. Amid these challenging times, the drive-in cinema in Islamabad is certainly a sight for many sore eyes. A visitor, Libya Ahmed, has described this as a great opportunity.
We've been in quarantine due to COVID-19 for approximately a year or something, so it's pretty amazing to have a safe place and a cool place to watch movies and go to, so it's cool.
The safety aspect of a drive-in cinema has drawn applause from many in the city. Another visitor, Azhar Hussain, lauded the fact that all SOPs have been taken care of with no compromise on social distancing.
It's a very good thing that's being done in Islamabad, that people can sit in their car, keeping the social distance, and while they also enjoy the film. And they're tuning it into their radio sets while they're watching the film. And there's some great stalls of food over here. I just had nachos and some popcorns. That's a great experience. It's especially for the kids. You know, you can bring your kids down here, and it's a good family time you can spend now.
Though drive-ins are not as popular as they used to be, the pandemic has fueled their re-emergence. A space for 500 cars has been reserved at the F9 Park in Islamabad following all SOPs, while simultaneously also keeping the park clean and environmental friendly for the residents of the Twin Cities. Manahil Ahmed, Indus News, Islamabad.
On to business. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says inflation in rate the country is on its way down because of effective and consistent policies. In a tweet, Khan said the core inflation and consumer price index are now lower than what they were when he took office. The Prime Minister said he has directed his economic team to ensure that inflation stays under control. Meanwhile, the Minister for Planning and Development, Asad Omar, added the rate of inflation has been continuously declining in Pakistan. He pointed out the Consumer Price Index has reduced by 0.01%, while core inflation fell 2.2%. And Pakistan's exports to China crossed $312 million in December 2020. The data from General Administration of Customs of China shows the exports increased by 41% year on year. The data shows the exports were worth $221 million for the same month of the previous year. The overall exports from January to December 2020 amount to over $2 billion. Meanwhile, imports from China decreased from over $16 billion to around $15 billion. The overall imports and exports between the two countries increased to $5.46 billion. The data shows the increase in exports was led by trade in textiles, seafood, and agricultural products. And the Purchasing Managers Index for China's manufacturing sector has recorded expansion for the 11th consecutive month. Data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows January's PMI came in at 51.3, edging down from December. The reading of currency finance, capital market, and insurance were recorded above 60%. Air transport, accommodation, catering services, sports, and entertainment were below the prosperity line of 50%. The government data shows some industries exhibited relatively speedy growth despite a slight drop in PMI.
All localities and departments continue to coordinate efforts to promote epidemic prevention and control along with economic and social development. Although the manufacturing PMI dropped slightly this month, it remained in the expansion range and some industries show relatively speedy growth.
China's annual Central Economic Work Conference has put the growth of the seed sector high on the agenda for this year. A world-famous Chinese expert says improved research and development of seeds is vital to crop yield and food security. More in this report.
Van Tianmin has been working on rice molecular genetics and breeding for many years. He says to ensure national food security, per hectare production must be increased. Top leaders in China have urged intensified efforts to achieve scientific and technological breakthroughs in seed cultivation. The economic conference last month designated seed protection and establishment of seed banks as one of the 8 key tasks.
The reason the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China has stressed to achieve breakthroughs in the seed industry this time is that we need to improve research on original technologies, especially in basic research.
China has relatively high per hectare production of rice and wheat. However, the country still lags behind the technology to cultivate corn and soybeans, whose per hectare productions were just 2/3 of the highest world's level. For Van, China should speed up technological breakthroughs and break bottlenecks in cultivating seeds of these agricultural species.
In developed countries, superior crop varieties have contributed to more than 60% of their per hectare production, while the contribution of superior crop varieties in our country is about 45%, and superior rice and wheat varieties contribute to more than 50% of our per hectare production. Therefore, there is considerable room for improvement in our work.
Currently, China has per hectare production of wheat 30% higher than the international level, while the per hectare production of rice is 1.7 times that of the international level.
Most Gulf bourses have dropped in early trade, mirroring the global sell-off as GameStop continues to rattle markets. Slower vaccine rollout in Europe also stoked worries about the state of the world economy. Dubai financial market traded over 0.5% lower, mainly dragged down by real estate stocks. In Abu Dhabi, financial stocks have dragged down the index marginally lower. First Abu Dhabi Bank slipped 0.5%, while Bank of Sharjah plunged almost 5%. Qatar's main 20 stock index has shed around 0.5%, with energy and banking stocks weighing the most. Bahrain's bourses also slipped fractionally, with the GFH Financial Group shedding over 1%. But a 0.5% rise in Kuwait Financial House and Ahli United Bank has helped Kuwait's premier index edge up fractionally. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.